that'll be a big thing of it, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Yeah.
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 Um, let's go. Let's get
we
there.
go.
I got
Go
about
ahead.
35, 40 minutes I can do here. So
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go.
let's nail them out. Okay. Uh, next is from Narsk Rigagig, and the subject is Wyatt plans. There was a report over the previous week the current plans for Bray Wyatt to make his big return again to WWE for SummerSlam 2023 for a possible match with Cody Rhodes at the event. It had also been said that due to Wyatt's track record of suddenly needing time off, WWE have already backup plans in place for a third Cody Rhodes versus Brock Lesnar match just in case. What I would like to know from you guys, especially Conan, is how would you handle and book Bray Wyatt's return to WWE, and also how would you handle a talent like him who, whether it's his fault or not, has gained himself a reputation for being a person that WWE simply cannot rely on?
Well, I'm a big fan, and my past will show this that I give people second and even third chances. Um, if you're very, very special, and I really think that you can be redeemed, I've even gone as far as a fourth, but that's very rare. If I feel that we can't rely on you, I just have to let you go. Because I, at the end of the day, what I've learned is when I get rid of guys that are a problem or a pain in the ass or a headache. Usually they never change, and the only thing that's happening is somebody else is inheriting my problem. So here you go. Is this headphones not working or something?
I don't
You
know
think?
what happened now. Yeah. All right, there we go.
Bro, let me tell you, Disco,
Hmm?
Josh to me is as entertaining or informative as anybody out there today doing baseball. I'm surprised that they don't have him doing
Yeah,
something like that.
MLB
Yeah, well,
Network or somebody.
he probably hadn't looked
As a,
into it or tried to, I don't know.
he
Just kinda
should.
yeah.
Yeah.
Next is from Long Grand Wang. Subject is Hardy's done. Conrad Thompson just referred to Disco Inferno as, quote, a highly controversial podcaster, unquote. Why? Because he speaks his mind and isn't shill? Anyway, guys, a few weeks ago, an episode of Rampage was hyped around the Hardys doing another deletion match, and the final rating for it was like 280,000 viewers. A total utter disaster on any metric. My question is, and this one hurts as a longtime Hardys mark since I was a kid, do you think that they're done? I mean, Matt looks like he's in constant pain. Jeff really should not be risking any more pain or injuries, and clearly the American public don't care about them enough to want to tune in. What do you guys think? Also, if Billy Body is such a big-time podcaster, how come no one has ever heard of his show? Um, let me, the Hardys, bro, you can just tell Matt's got a bad hip, and it slows him down in there. Jeff should be more of an attraction, and it's like they're not really treating him like an attraction. I don't know.
I didn't
It's
even
like
know they did like a final deletion type.
well, nobody
segment on the
watches
show.
Rampage.
I
Why
didn't
would
know
you?
about it.
Yeah. I mean,
But why wouldn't you do that on Dynamite anyway? That is an attraction in its own
I don't
way if
know.
it's placed in the right. You know what I mean?
Tony books these shows like he doesn't understand that nobody watches Rampage. Because they don't really reference a lot of the stuff that happened on Rampage, and it's like you're not doing a lot of packages of this happened on Rampage. Like I don't know. It's just weird.
And
Yeah,
if
he puts more time and invests more time into Ring of Honor than he does Rampage. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
yeah, and if
I
Collision
do.
is go ahead, go on.
No, my thing is the guy saying his question was, "Are they done?" Was that it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Hardy's done. Yeah,
Because they did a low number on Rampage or something like that.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
guess so.
so bro, that's not the only metric to measure their success. These guys could go out on the indies and make maybe even more money. I don't know how much they're making now. Maybe making more than they are now, but they'd have to work more, right? There's still a big name. There's still somebody you could, because to
I'd
me,
argue that.
okay, well,
Because
you
they're
can argue
honestly
it all
like,
you want,
well, I'm saying FTR against the Hardys. If you
right?
advertise that 4 years ago,
Right.
that's an appealing match. Today, I mean, am
Well,
I right?
here's the thing. In Mexico, they're still very hot. Like if
Yeah.
we were to mention them on any big show, the show would be either sellout or close to a sellout. In Mexico, in the Indies, they'd be very hot, and they still have name value. Would you rather put on a show? I'm going to ask you, Disco, FTR against the Hardy Boys or FTR against Jimmy Utah and Daniel Garcia?
Well, if it gets our Hardy Boys, because I think we'll draw more people.
Right. Well,
But
they
yeah,
still have some benefit. That's
yeah.
my point. Yeah.
Next is from our boy Jed Frankfurter of the Ebony and Ivory podcast he does with Mike Holder. That's been a disaster.
Can you tell the people why that podcast got broken up? Because some people are new and don't know.
Yeah, Ebony and Ivory, the whole idea was discuss social and political issues. You had a black host, you had a white host, and it was
And racial harmony, by the way.
Yeah, and it was supposed to promote racial harmony, see how these guys could have a conversation, maybe agree to disagree, and it never turns out that way. It turns into a shouting match. I think Holder even wanted to drive to his house to beat him up, and it's a mess.
Well, I believe the show ended because the show on racial harmony between a black and a Caucasian ended up in fisticuffs. Exactly. So I like that. I like that a lot.
They can't be trusted in the same area at the same time. That's for sure.
The subject is biggest underdog in sports history. Hey, Keeping 100 crew. The show keeps getting better and better. I give much of the credit to Joe.
Wait a minute. Wait 1 second. All right.
I saw something on Twitter the other day asking for the biggest underdog in sports history. My pick was James Buster Douglas. So I was curious what you thought, what you three thought, and what your answers would be. Thanks to this very best friend of the show, Jed Frankfurter. Buster Douglas would be in there, but I still think that the 1980 United States Olympic team beating that Russian
team. That's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say.
Anybody knows the history of leading up to that, the Russians came over to the United States like a month before. And we're playing exhibition games against NHL teams and destroying them, like 10-3, and they looked like a flawless. Like they were every goal was a highlight. Like it was tic tac toe, boom boom boom, pass goal. Right? It just make them look silly, and they just got beat by a bunch of like guys that weren't even in the NHL. Like it was just a bunch of college kids, like and like journeymen and stuff. And they beat the best team on the planet. And they should never. It should never happen. That's
and they were very feared, very respected. The Russian national team, that was like a national sport where hockey was not a national sport here. Okay, right. There were college players, as you alluded to, and what a lot of people don't remember, and I'm sure you do. A lot of people think that was the championship game. No, that was a semifinal. They ended up beating, I believe, Finland in the finals.
Right.
I was in
Holly Holm beating Ronda. That's a big upset.
That is
a big upset.
That wasn't as big as Buster Douglas was a 50-1 underdog.
Oh man, that was
Holly Holm was like 8-1.
Yeah,
but still, it was people that don't know, but people that don't know about odds, just talking about upsets. That's a big upset.
Right. So next is from Suganda Chanko, and the subject is wrestler nicknames. Hey, K100 crew, I know Disco listens to Cornette here and there, so you might have heard some of these. But I know Conan probably hasn't heard any of these wrestler nicknames created by Jim Cornette in his podcast. I'd like to get your thoughts on some of them. That's part of the entertainment of Cornette is hearing the names he comes up with for the wrestlers. Plumber Moxley.
Wait a minute.
He calls him Plumber Moxley. He looks like a plumber. Calls Nick Gage the bank-addicted drug robber. Okay.
Wait a minute.
Calls Orange Cassidy our little dog pockets.
Right.
He calls Renee Moxley good. Brenda posh English accent.
Mm-hmm.
He calls Tay Mello old face. He calls Will Ospreay Will Ostrich. He calls the best friends the Puddin' Gang. He calls Chuck Taylor Chuck.
Wait. Who is the Pudding Gang? Is that some white boy you don't know about?
I don't know what that is either.
That's probably
the Pudding Gang.
Yeah, I don't know what the Pudding.
No, but I'm saying, is that from a show? Is that a comic? Is this some Southern? I don't know about.
Yeah, that's probably some super old.
Why don't you look that up, dude? The Pudding Gang.
Yeah.
The next one's Chucky Taylor.
Right.
Brandon Cutlet.
Right.
Michael Nikazawa, he calls Michael knock it the off.
Right.
He calls Don Fallis the invisible.
Wait a minute. He might have gotten that from me.
The invisible.
Yeah, I remember I said that he was no longer, because he said he was the invisible hand. And I said, I also heard you the invisible. Maybe you don't remember
the giant
that. You're on the show.
That's Saddam Singh. He calls Kenny. He calls Kenny. Kenny Omega. He calls him Twinkle Toes McFarlane, Kenny Olivier, and Harpo. And he calls the Young Bucks the Hardley Boys, the Buckaroos, and Pie Face Buck and Balding Buck.
So, I can't
now, out of all of those, which ones do you find funny, Disco?
The Invisible Don Fallis.
All right.
Chuckle.
Plumber Moxley.
I like the bank addicted drug robber too, instead of the bank.
Which do you like, Joe?
I like Chuckle Taylor. And yeah, but we're someone will have to explain to us the pudding gang because I ain't finding. I'm sure.
Okay,
some
so I
kinda-
like.
Yeah.
Okay, if somebody knows some guy in the South that knows what the pudding gang is, please
Yeah.
let us know. Plumber Moxley, I like. Big pop for that. And the only other one that I like is I would take the out, and I like the Harpo. He does look like Harpo Marx a little bit.
Next one's from Ik5150, and the subject is question. Sup, squad? Thanks for the 2 weeks off. Question:
Mhm.
What's the better franchise? Die Hard, Rocky, Star Wars, or James Bond? And he has asked me to announce Conan's name in the Fink's voice. I'm sorry, but we don't take suggestions.
Yeah.
The best franchise is Bond, in my opinion.
I like Rocky.
Really?
I have to go with Rocky.
And they're all decent, but I think
Die
Bond
Hard's
is-
great. I mean, the first three.
Yeah. So, but yeah, they had some stinkers though. So that's
Mhm.
you know. All right. Next is from Neil DeMood, and the subject is stripper gimmicks. Hey fellas, there are many similarities between the adult entertainment business and the wrestling business. For the first time since the start of the pandemic, I had the pleasure of enjoying an evening at a local gentleman's club. At this particular club, each performer had their own gimmick. A nurse, teacher, and soccer player were a few of the gimmicks that I observed during my visit. Do you guys have a particular favorite gimmick when it comes to exotic performers? I myself am addicted to the maids.
Ooh.
He got. Do you see what he
Neil,
did there, Joe?
Neil, what are you
Conan?
doing?
Suspend this guy.
Suspended for a week.
All right, Neil.
Next is some Jared Drizzle, and the subject is a food for thought. Hi, Conan, Disco, and Joe. Looking back on something about the idea of the plan of NXT going global. Even though that was 2018, now that there's a discussion about Nick Khan talking about creating a lucha-style show with the success of the wrestlers as of late. My question is, if this does happen, do you think it have the same effect that the UK scene had, or had a dead period after the creation of the show? Just curious to see what y'all think of the speculation. Rest easy. That's from Jared. Bro, the last thing wrestling needs is more content. They need to fix the content that they have right now to make it better to draw more fans. Is this spreading more content out is just going to dilute the product, in my opinion.
Well, here's what Khan said in this at this telecom conference. It says Nick Khan discussed the potential of adding more WWE content. Ideally for us, we would go every day of the week as long as there's a unique product we can put on the air and resonate. Something we discussed internally, Lucha Libre, which is big in Mexico and Latin America, to start something like that down the road. This would be well after US and UK media rights are settled. The synergies are all in place and we have our legs under us. That's something that's interesting to us, especially with the growing Hispanic audience in the U.S. We over-index in the Hispanic community already with our English content. To target that is something of interest for us. So maybe we'll see an NXT Mexico or something one day.
Who knows?
Well, he's smart, bro. He's trying to hit the... Huh?
I just said all I have time for is SmackDown, Raw, and Dynamite. That's it.
Yeah.
Right, but if you're Latino, you might. But if you're Latino, which okay, but if you're Latino, which is the biggest minority in the United States, and I've said this before and I said again, will be majority minority by 2043. Will be majority minority in the workforce by 2033. So you're gonna have to serve us sooner or later. You know what I'm saying? And not only that, I brought this up before, and it's worth repeating. Since the census have been taken. Since our first president, George Washington, last census, the largest population, 16 and under, are non-whites. It's called the browning up of the population. And out of those non-whites, the biggest population is Latino. You're going to have to serve us.
Well, that doesn't mean you have to give them Lucha Libre.
Why not?
Sure it does.
That's your right. We're
Latino. Wait, time out.
Why wouldn't you serve? Then why is there a food section in every major market that says Hispanics?
We're talking about
that is the point. You're serving a Hispanic crowd.
Visual wrestling content. If they're born here, why are we giving them the type of style that they wrestle over in Mexico?
Because the biggest minority, which is about to become the majority, is living in this country. Why would you not want to give them soccer, lucha libre, and anything else they like?
Wrestling is not based on race. Okay.
Yes, it is, because a lot of Latinos want to watch. Bro, you're absolutely wrong. Well, I can tell you this. Most Latinos I know would rather watch a lucha libre show than an American show, whether you believe that or not.
Okay, but my point is,
geared toward
you can get Latino wrestlers that don't have to wrestle the lucha libre style. Well, that's the point I'm trying to make. If they're born here, get more Latinos into the business, okay? But you don't have to teach them that like the other style. The brothers like. It's just weird that like they're in Mexico they've always wrestled a different style.
Why is it weird? Why is that weird? Why is that weird?
Because that style has had trouble resonating over here. It's a different.
Well, like, when they came up with it, they weren't worried about the United States. They were worried about getting crowds in Mexico. And here's the fun part of all this. Even though at the beginning, when we first went to WCW and you were there and we were disrespected, they talked over our matches, they made fun of us and all that. Guess what? Now Lucha Libre is everywhere, and everybody. I was just talking with a Laredo kid, and he was like, "Hey, because I needed him for some interview." He was like, "I can't go because I'm going to Belgium to do a lucha match, bro. That makes me feel good." When I went to Canada not too long ago, when I first went to Stampede, because that was like my first territory outside the United States, nobody knew what lucha was. Nobody knew how to wrestle except one guy called Jason Anderson. Thank you very much for letting me stay at your crib. But he was the only guy. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew what it was about. Nobody knew how to explain it. Fast forward to like 2005, Teddy Hart brings me out for a show in Stampede. I hadn't been there in like 20 years. And before I even came out, the whole crowd was chanting lucha, lucha, because it's everywhere now. The problem is a lot of people watch videos and they don't do it right, and that's what makes it look like. But the guys that know what they're doing, it's creative and it's an art. So I mega disagree with you on that.
Yeah, you have the right to be wrong. Next is from William Molina.
Don't use my own lines on me, please. Thank you.